Okay. Larry, are you going to lead us?
Oh, I guess. Okay, I'm Larry Pennington. I've been off and on with the chapter. I was chapter chair for a couple of years, and then stupidly volunteered to be treasurer for a couple of years. And now I'm kind of back with the Juniper Group, and I'm time to time co-leader of the Keep Waldo Wild campaign, which we've been working on for 10 years now, 11 years. And we started in 2010, going out and ground truthing, driving around the bumpy forest roads and figuring out what boundaries we might plausibly use that were not compromised by logging, basically, was the criteria. And since then, we put together the campaign based on maps we got from Oregon Wild and modified, and have had campouts now for 9 years, and we're going to have 10 last year, and COVID stopped that. So it was unbroken until COVID. This year, we just couldn't get it together, and we couldn't get the dates we wanted because they were reserved. But I'll go ahead and not make this. This is a photo of Waldo Lake, taken from what's called Mount Fuji, which is just to the south of the lake, and you're looking north. The mountains are the Three Sisters. I can only see two, and Broken Top and Mount Bachelor on the right. So the area is really scenic. Charlton Butte and the Twins can give you similar views in nearly 360 degrees. So I just thought I'd throw that up to get a feel. Let me now, oh, there's Matthew. You want to introduce, is he on yet? You want to introduce Matthew first before I go to the next share?
Sure.
Yes, there he is.
Matthew's part of the Juniper Group, and Matthew, you may not know Nate, who is on XCOM, and he's the fundraising chair.
Hi, Nate.
And you met Barb Hazen on the call last time, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Carol.
And you know Carol. Yeah. Okay. Good. We're ready.
Okay. Then, oh dear, let me see if this. I think I lost my slide that I was going to share, but we can go ahead to the PowerPoint.
You want me to put up? Oh, there you go.
Yeah. Okay, I'll just make sure it worked. Why? I see my words coming up below that. Is that?
Oh, the captions is on. Let's see.
Is there a way to stop that, or is that something you did?
I know I didn't do it. Let's see.
All right, I'll ignore it. But anyway, this is pretty much the same photo, and we're going to walk you through a PowerPoint that has some of the key. Let me see if I can get rid of that. It's really distracting me.
Okay, so I'm going to pause recording.
Why protect the Waldo Watershed? Dave Stove really is the brainchild, the genesis of this. He grew up in Bend, and as a kid, he would go out to Waldo Lake with his family, amongst many other places. And he remembered it as this pristine place that basically they never saw another human when they went out there. And so he came back to Bend after 30 years in San Diego and went out there looking and realized, oh my God, they put a road in and they put 3 campgrounds in, and there are people up here. And this place is so beautiful, it's liable to get overrun. So the genesis of our campaign was not to roll back anything that's there, but to try to maintain at least the natural beauty that state that we're at. The Forest Service has done pretty good at doing that, but because of the continued population growth and people trying to get out more and more, we see the pressure to to expand maybe motorized access, or even try to put in a lodge or more recreation facilities along the lake as real threats. Hasn't been a real logging threat in the past because most of the timber is mountain hemlock, and mountain hemlock is not really, it cracks as it dries, and it's not been useful as a construction lumber. But we're afraid that sometime in the future they'll figure out a way they want to use mountain hemlock, and the logging could become a threat. I've been told not to go through these photos too fast, so you can appreciate the beauty of the area. And Gretchen has put these together from the contributions from everybody. We've kind of lost track who did what, but they've accumulated over our campouts and people's hikes up in the area.
I'd like to just add that if you have any questions along the way, just interrupt and ask Larry.
As you can see in the left, there are quite a, we'll talk about a little more, mountain bikers really love the area, and they're pretty well entrenched. In fact, you might say from the times we've been up there lately, mountain bikers use it more than hikers do. So they're there, and that's a part of the landscape that's not going to be removed. And it's also, the lake is used by all kinds of watercraft, and of course the horse people are up there too. This is kind of a standard day. Until 1969, it was pretty primitive, and then, like I said, they put in a road in from Highway 58 that leaves 58 just 5 miles east of the Willamette Pass ski area. So it's paved, and it's a really good road. So it's opened up that area to people to use. And in fact, that's in a good thing, in a sense, because otherwise very few people would know it's there. It's home to many threatened species, and probably many more we don't really know, and has had 3 campgrounds put in on the east side. And there's also a gravel road that's not too good a shape to come straight in from Cascade Lakes Highway, which in truth we'd like to get closed if we could, but that's unlikely. The Waldo Lake Wilderness was created by Congress in 1984, and this was part of a large omnibus bill that had several other areas in it, including the ones up around Mount Hood and the Mount Jefferson area, and there was a lot of horse trading. The original proposal was to surround the lake with wilderness, and they only got about 56,000 acres as part of the trade-off within Congress of what they were going to do and what they weren't going to do. So that leaves the east side and the south side beyond the boundaries of the wilderness currently unprotected in any way other than just standard Forest Service regulations. We were able to make a real advancement in 2010 and 2013 by getting the state legislature to pass a ban on gas motors for the lake, which included float planes. And there was considerable motivation, people trying to fly into the lake and to bring motors onto the lake. And the problem with any kind of motor on the lake is the lake has a very low turnover of water, and it's also very pure. It's probably, we argue about whether it or Crater Lake are the purest lakes in the United States, but they're close. So any spill will take a long time to clear itself and could be a catastrophe there. So that was a real advancement to get the ban. Our proposal now is to establish what we're calling a backcountry recreation area of about 60,000 acres. But in addition to that, there will be 5 add-ons to existing wilderness areas, which I'll show you a map on the next slide of where those are, of about
Can I
15,000
ask-
acres. Go ahead.
Can I ask a question about the previous slide? The motorized use on the lake was banned twice. What's the story on
Well,
that?
actually, I think it was nearly 3 times, but the lake is on federal lands. So the Forest Service banned motors, and I think around 2010. A lawsuit was brought by at least the floatplane people. It may have included some others that wanted to bring motors in and boats. And so the court said the Forest Service did not have authority to ban the motors under states' rights, where the states are given jurisdiction over waters and hunting and fishing on federal lands. And it takes a while to get your head around that, but
Is that still the case?
yes, that's part of, I think it's derived, there's a law, a congressional law that codifies it, but it's derived from the Constitution, in that everything granted in the Constitution to the federal government, not granted to the federal government, the Constitution is reserved to states. And so that's how they get rights over hunting and the waterways on federal lands. And then in 2013, to get around that, there was a huge campaign mounted by the Sierra Club principally, but several other organizations in 2013 to get a law passed in the state legislature, which would make it firm that the motors are banned on the lake. So we had to do it twice, yes.
Okay, thank you for explaining that.
Well, I don't think I need to read all of that, but basically we want to protect what's there and ban any opening to timber, further development, logging, and off motorized vehicles in the area is beyond what's currently authorized. Motorized vehicles can go up the roads. That includes snowmobiles in the winter. And we're leaving that in our proposal because we just don't want them to advance, to start out through the trails like they do in most places. We want the broadest possible community support, and we're looking for hikers, bikers, runners, boaters, hunters, equestrians, and other non-motorized activities, which is why the proposal isn't entirely for wilderness area, because, for instance, the mountain bikers and the runners are really ensconced in the area, and we would create intense opposition to a total wilderness proposal if we tried to do that. And we'd lose, basically, because they have enough political power to basically win, I think. This is a map of the boundaries. And the very light green is existing wilderness, the Three Sisters and the Waldo Lake. The middle green is what we're proposing as backcountry recreation area. And the very dark green are the wilderness additions that are adjacent to the existing wilderness. So we don't think there's a lot of opposition to that.
Can you zoom in on that, Larry?
Say that again.
Can you zoom
No,
on
I
that
can't
map?
on
Okay.
this. I could well, I'd have to get up everything I've got. I can't really zoom in. I'd have to get up the mapping program. And
Larry, you've got a link
That's
on our
fine.
website that would have larger maps she could go to, right?
pardon?
You have a link on the website she could go to to see a larger map.
Yeah, if you go
Okay,
to the website and find the Waldo, and then go to, there's a whole page of maps. And basically there's what you see when the page comes up for each one, but you can click on it and it goes to a much bigger, and you can zoom in on it
great. Thank you.
there. Is there any particular thing you were interested in looking at?
My eyes just can't read any of this little type unless I get my nose right up to the screen. So
Oh, okay.
that's okay. I can look on the website. That'd be great.
We want to protect, the main thrust is to protect the Waldo Lake Watershed. Like I said before, the turnover rate is very low. Basically, the water in is snow melt and rain, and there are a few little creeks. And the sides, the water out is really it's a ditch. It's called the headwaters of the middle fork of the north fork of the Willamette, I think, or something like that. So that outflow is very small. I've hiked over there and just been amazed how small it is. So we want to keep it pure. Hemlock goes all around, except a little on the southwest corner that's not hemlock, that's mixed conifer. We want to make the existing inventoried roadless areas permanent. Now, does everybody know what the inventoried roadless area designation is? It's a Forest Service thing. Okay, I see heads no. Oh dear, I'm gonna go back to, I'd have to go back and look, but somewhere in the 60s or 70s, I think, the Forest Service was, after the Wilderness Act passed, they were directed by Congress to inventory all federal lands, both the Forest Service and the BLM, and come up with lands that had wilderness characteristics. In other words, could potentially be wilderness. And the Forest Service called it inventoried roadless area. In other words, it had no development, no roads, no logging into the area at the time. So all of the area that we're taking, and they were supposed to make a recommendation for Congress to either turn it into wilderness or not. And Congress was supposed to act. Well, the Wilderness Act was 64, and that's what, 60 years now? And none of that's been done because nobody can agree on anything. So anyway, this is inventoried roadless area. We want to provide put another link in the wildlife migration corridor that basically runs from the all the way from Mount Hood down to the California border, with certain large exceptions. But this would add a chink between the Three Sisters and the Diamond Peak Wilderness. It would provide habitat that wouldn't get overrun any more than possible. It includes a Pacific Crest Trail corridor for about 14 miles that runs from Maiden Peak up to the north to get to around Cultus Lake, and provides the, I guess, visitor amenities of peace and quiet, and the Cascade view crest views I've already shown. Oh, I missed one here. This shows the wildlife corridor such as it is. This is Waldo, and this is Thielsen down here around south of, that's another area, south of Crater Lake. Thielsen here, Diamond Peak, Three Sisters, and Waldo, and then you run all the way up to Mount Hood. And you can see there are gaps, and we want to help fill that in. And the problem for wildlife is the more you chop up their habitat, the less they're going to succeed, and the gene pool gets smaller and smaller until they're not viable and they start to have reproduction issues. We'll allow mountain biking, trail running, and there's a 100 kilometer run, and which is just incredible every year out of the ski area. They do something like what was it? A total of 23,000 vertical feet in this one day in this run. That's a superhuman animal to me. Allow equestrian activities, hunting and fishing, kayaking, and non-motorized sailboating, Native American forest product harvesting, and we want to limit mechanical trail maintenance activities, though the way the bill's written, we do allow some to, because it's not wilderness, and it's a big thing, both the trail runners and the mountain bikers to be able to get in and clear the trails in the spring. And in deference to them, they do the most of the trail clearance. The Forest Service really has no money to do it. So the reason the trails are open there are user activities. We will not limit their firefighting activities for the Forest Service, which is a big issue with many of the constituent activities, and the county commissioners were concerned about that in one of their visits up to the area a few years ago. Here's some more photos. Go ahead.
One question, the mechanical trail maintenance, when you say mechanical, does that mean like gas powered chainsaws?
Yes.
Okay.
And that's principally what would be allowed, because it makes a huge difference in how hard it is to maintain the trails. What prohibited new facilities outside of the existing campgrounds, which is a big thing. Off-road vehicles, snowmobiling, all motorized equipment and engines beyond the developed roads, like that I talked about, and trail maintenance and firefighting. There's a statement in our bill draft that prohibits creation of new trails. We're good with the ones that are there, but we don't want to see the whole area just crisscrossed with trails everywhere. So we're saying no new, no logging, no permanent commercial activities, and no mining and geothermal. Now, most of these are already prohibited right now by the Forest Service under administrative rules, but our concern is that we get a President Sarah Palin or any wacko, and they replace the Forest Service with somebody who wants to just log everything. All of these rules can be overdone over time and with the wrong motivation. So we obviously a congressional law can be undone too, but it's much harder.
So Larry, is there anything in the proposal about fuels reduction? Because that's the big push everywhere all the time now.
No, I think the answer is no, but in what sense are you asking?
Well, you know, I could just envision the Forest Service saying, oh, we need to do some prescribed burn. We need to thin and prune and burn in here because it's so fire prone.
I'd have to go look at, that's a good question. I'd have to go look at the exact wording we put in, but I think we basically have banned any commercial logging.
Right. So they could, you know, that's what I'm saying. They could come in and say, oh, this is an environmental, you know, this is an ecological thin. And we're not selling anything. So it's non-commercial.
Well, let me, why don't I go through, and I'd have to go back and find, let me get out of, we can go through this, and that's a good question. Let me go through this, and we get out of screen share. I can bring up the bill language and see if I can find that. because there is a specific statement about logging, and I can't remember exactly how it's worded.
Okay.
Well, I guess 2001 is the inventoried roadless rule. This is an overlay of our boundaries and the inventoried roadless area around there. The brown is the inventoried roadless area, and the hatched and cross-checked are the areas we want to include in the protection boundaries. And the point of the slide is that we drew our boundaries basically along to match the boundaries of the inventoried roadless area, so that we didn't go out into logged areas that are currently logged. If, I don't know, it's pretty fine, but if you look along the east boundary, the right side, you'll see all kinds of little roads coming right up to where our boundaries are. Those are logging roads. So that area has all been logged all the way up and down the Pacific Crest up to that line. And inside of that, where we're proposing to make our protections, there has been no logging. And that's true. The strange boundaries over on the left side, if you can read it around the Deer Camp Lake area, this area looks like a bite is taken out of it. That's because this area in here has been logged. It's got clear cuts through it. So we didn't want to take that on and try to fight that battle. We had one of our members early that wanted to include this whole area out here to the left, to the west. And we decided that was a battle we didn't want to take on because it's all been logged. It's got logging roads through it. So we want to protect the Waldo watershed, and we're trying to keep our focus on that. This is Gold Lake, I think. Our trips through the ages. God, there's just faces we don't see much anymore, including our past chapter director. All right, the 2021 campaign plan is to try to pass federal legislation in this session of Congress. We feel like we finally got an amenable environment, I guess, back there, you'd say. All three branches of the government controlled by Democrats, although tenuously, and we think we might get it through. The primary partners we've got right now, we want to expand this, are the Many Rivers Group in Eugene, and mountain biking groups in Bend, Sisters, Oak Ridge, and other areas, which we're working with right now to re-up their endorsements. We've got endorsements from the COTA, the Bend group, the Goats, the Oak Ridge group. We don't have anything from the Disciples of Dirt in Eugene. We'd like to get them. And there's a broader coalition of Oregon mountain biking groups that we'd like to get endorsed, because they're a powerful political force as well as economic force in the area, and we need to have them on board, or we probably can't get Wyden, Merkley, and DeFazio to push this over the line. What we want to do is explain the concept to as many people as we can, build public support, and we just talked about today, we're going to start trying to do a postcard and letter writing campaign to politicians. We need to get city councils, county commissioners as much on board as we can. Some of those are not reachable, but some others are. Reaffirm the endorsements from the mountain biking groups. Like I said, we need to gather as much information and put together selling point papers for why the area is really worth protecting. And develop the materials to show that. We need to try to get as many organizations and businesses as we can to endorse the effort. And we're embarking on a program of this summer and early fall, before it gets too cold, to get as many staff people from the congressional groups or representatives that control the area, primarily being DeFazio, Merkley, and Wyden, out there again to see it. We've had them out there before, but that was a few years ago, and we need to renew that familiarity. And like I said, and then introduce legislation by year end, or if that slips, certainly we want to try to get it done by the beginning of the year. Okay, how can you help? Hike as much up there as we can, and if groups want to go up in, if it's not too hot, it's starting to get, this is the good time, because July is generally plagued with mosquitoes, even though the weather might be good. So the best hiking time is August through October. Inventory what's there, talk to your friends, write letters to congressmen and senators. And I don't know, maybe Gretchen want to talk a little more about that after we get through, finish this. Promote collaboration with everybody we can. Ask businesses to support us. Promote the campaign with all the politicians you know, because even though they don't have jurisdiction, they can be influential. Donate to our campaign, and let us know, communicate with us if you want to join. And that's the end of the slideshow. So I guess I can go back and, Gretchen, you want to add more or open to questions?
Stop sharing.
Okay.
And thank you. Does anyone have a question straight off the top here? Carol?
I have a couple questions. First of all, thank you. I need to get out there. It's I'm inspired. I am wondering where the governor is on this. You know, the endorsement of Kate Brown would probably go a real long way.
That's true. That's very true. I don't have a contact person who's close to the governor, but maybe one of the senator staff, or maybe we can find that route, because I agree. And if we get the senators and DeFazio, that it would be a lot easier to get Governor Brown's endorsement. So that's a good point, definitely.
And then I'm wondering about endorsement by mountain bike groups, like on a national level, if anyone's looked into that. Because I know my brothers are avid mountain bikers and they travel to go mountain biking.
Well, we did have the endorsement from what's called IMBA, the International Mountain Biking Association. And at the time, this is 2014 or so, all of the Oregon local mountain biking communities were members of IMBA. But there was a falling out, as I understand it, about 2 or 3 years, around 2016, 2017. And they have all removed themselves from IMBA and created the Oregon Mountain Biking OMB Coalition, I think. and which they have a really good webpage, you want to look it up, in which all the local groups are now affiliated with this Oregon umbrella group. So we have a letter from IMBA from 2014 saying they agreed to it, but one of our tasks now is to get a letter from this Oregon coalition, because they're more influential. Really, IMBA has no influence right now, I think, in Oregon, since everybody's left.
But your idea of getting more far-reaching mountain groups, I think that's an excellent suggestion. Thank you. This is why we do this, to get your
Yes.
ideas.
Okay. Let's see, I had one other question. Oh, is there anything about carbon or climate in the proposal?
No. I would, except to not cut the trees. Gretchen's
Well-
moving her mouth.
That's big.
I added the slide about forests for climate defense in the slideshow. And that's definitely an element that I'm very passionate about how much carbon is sequestered in this area. So yeah, we're going to add this climate aspect, definitely. So
And it seems like also tying it in with 30 by 30.
yes.
would be
And that's
important.
in some other materials that I have going, but
Okay.
yes.
I
And
think
does
that's-
everybody, Matt, Nate, do you know what 30 by 30 campaign is?
Don't actually.
Okay, there is a national movement, and actually it's international, to set aside 30% of land, waters, and ocean by 2030. So they're calling it 30 by 30. And so the Sierra Club has a big push on more land protection right now, as do a lot of other organizations. And E.O. Wilson has written a book about how we should set aside 50% of the planet to be wilderness and to reestablish ecosystems and all of that sort of thing. So it's a big deal in environmental circles. Wouldn't you say, Carol? Does that cover it pretty well?
Yeah, and it also dovetails with Biden's, speaking of EO, his Biden's executive order on climate and the environment. And the document that was released recently called America the Beautiful, which is, it's flawed, as you can imagine, but it is about this attempt to protect 30% of America's land and waters by 2030, and they're proposing to do that by including working lands. So I don't know how that all plays out, because I've only read the introduction to the document.
And working lands could include agricultural lands then?
Yes.
Yeah. And unfortunately, a lot of times agricultural lands are full of herbicides and pesticides and other pollutants and contaminants. So, yeah.
Yeah, I listened to a discussion on the Wildlands Committee call, I guess 3 months ago. And there's a lot of ambiguity about exactly what qualifies as a 30 by 30 land. And some people are not happy with what's being included.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, something is better than nothing. And how do you get there?
Right. And, as you've probably seen, the dead zones off of the coast of Oregon are appearing even earlier this year than they do. And a lot of that is from agricultural runoff that destroys the oxygen levels, as well as the heat of the oceans that is coming from the warming climate. So, yeah, Nate?
Nate?
Yeah, I thought of a couple questions. So one, this seems like an amazing project that you guys have built up. And I also really love that it seems like it started out as the Juniper Group's project, and then it expanded into a partnership with many rivers. So my main two questions right now are, if this were to become, do you feel like this is something that the chapter is pushing? And if it isn't, what would the chapter pushing it look like as opposed to what it is now?
Well, you want me to do that, Gretchen? We have gone through stages, and it started, you're right, it started as a Juniper Group thing back in 2010, 11, 12. And then about 2013 and 14, we got the chapter endorsed it as a primary campaign project. And that lasted for 3-4 years, something like that. And then the chapter kind of disintegrated, and having any projects or any goals or doing anything. That's when we were going bankrupt. And so that got lost. And now we're trying to resuscitate it by bringing in Many Rivers Group, because actually the lake is in their area. So we're kind of poaching to begin with. But yeah, we need the part of the purpose of this call or Zoom is to bring the chapter on board and say, this is a chapter priority. And because it really is a statewide project, not just a little group project.
So my second question, or my follow-on question to that, would be, if there were specific fundraising efforts, or not even necessarily specific fundraising efforts, but so for example, I know that we have at least one major donor that we're talking to, that we're trying to cultivate more of a relationship with, and that's part of a broader effort, Sierra Club chapter wide, to do that more. And one of the things that person is particularly interested in is wilderness conservation and species conservation. So if more fundraising outreach was to specifically cite this project, this effort, and let's say that did end up raising some money, what would we be able to say that money could go to help you guys out? And if we don't have a specific answer to that right now, and if money isn't helpful in this, that's fine, but I'm putting that question out there.
Well, we have two avenues to where we need money, and one is to hire a part-time staff or intern person who can do a lot of that outreach to get the endorsements of businesses, and just a huge circle of endorsements. And the second is to develop materials that we can use, like video. We want to do multimedia, I guess you would say, approach. And part of that is to sell to the senators and the Congress people. And then the other is to do some research about the flora and fauna there, and to write up some documentation about what we're protecting there. And certainly Many Rivers is key, because DeFazio is there, and as Larry said, it's in their territory, and Eugene is a very progressive community, and we hope to get a lot of support out of Eugene and that area. And the other thing would be, the universities. So, we need to have more people helping us with that. So that we would like to use money to hire some people to help with that.
Okay.
Larry, can you think of other things, Larry?
What was the second part of your question, Nate?
Well, my question was basically just, if fundraising was being targeted at this, what would that money go to? And question outlined two, or actually I would say 3 different things, because I'd see the staff doing the outreach to build the endorsements slightly different than the multimedia effort, but we could talk about that.
Okay.
But,
yeah. You jogged my memory. Here's the only caveat that gets messy: the difference between C3 and C4 monies. And if C3 is allowed to do general education and interest in the area, and which we need to do, and to get people aware of the area and that it needs to be protected. But you cannot use C3 monies to advocate legislation, which we need and is part of the campaign. So it'll be a tricky divide line of how to use C3 monies to move the campaign forward, but not cross that boundary. So obviously C4 money is preferable, and that you can use it for anything. So that's the only, I guess, caution about raising money and how you raise it, and then what we would be able to use it for. I think we can use both, but
Yeah, I was gonna say it's a
there would have to be lines.
it's 2 tracks.
Yeah, and that might make it easier. I'm not sure. I need to dig in on that a bit, but that might change. That would change how we would do it, but I think that would be manageable. I guess sort of a follow-up question to all that then, and I apologize, but, and again, we don't need to have the answer to this now, but do you have any sense of, like, the things you just outlined, Gretchen, have you guys thought about a price tag on those things? Okay.
Go ahead.
Well, we haven't priced things out because it's a wish list right now. And you know, we can dig into that if it would make a difference in this donor being more interested in helping on the project. So if you think so, you know, tell us to go that direction.
Yeah. Okay. Let me think about it. Let me talk to, there's somebody at National I want to talk to. I want to process this a bit and get a better sense of what I think we can do. But thank you for that information, because I definitely want to consider this as a possibility.
Only 2 things we kind of have an idea about is there's a local outfit in Bend that we could probably get to do a video for us over the, it would take a while to put it together because the time to go up and shoot is limited up there because of the snow and the climate. But that might be about $10,000 to put something together that would be in a really good way, really usable to sell. The other thing is if we had a part-time staffer, I think you're looking at, you know, with maybe 40 to 50,000 a year for somebody credible that could do work. And if you had, say, half of that, I'm talking with overhead, say half of that, probably 30,000. So to get somebody that could actually move the campaign forward for us, I think you're talking $30,000 or $40,000 in a year to do that, roughly.
And of course, that all can be scaled one way or the other, depending on the resources that we had.
Okay. Okay. Well, but we would also want to make sure that it was effective. Like, yes, you might be able to spend $10,000 on a staffer, but if they're going to make only 5% of a difference, is that $10,000 better put someplace else for you guys, even on this project?
Right.
So, yeah.
Yeah. Carol?
The Keep Waldo Wild campaign is a designated priority campaign for 2021 for the chapter. It's included. So, you know, this is late in the year to be actually getting to a meeting on it, and I wish that the CONSCOM had jumped in on it sooner, but I just feel like I want to, I have limited time and energy, but I'm inspired to pull out some stops and really help get this rolling, because you're talking about introducing legislation by the end of the year, and that's going to be here in the blink of an eye. So Nate's question of, you know, what would chapter support look like? I think we want to maybe have you guys come to the next conservation or have a special conservation committee meeting where we lay out a plan to work at the chapter level with you on this.
One thing I'll add is we are developing a postcard campaign, which is similar to what the Crater Lake group is doing. So I've developed text and selected some photos, and the idea is to send these postcards to Wyden, DeFazio, and Merkley, saying that the undersigned supports this project. And the other thing we want to do is put a nice article in the chapter newsletter with a link to where they can sign a virtual postcard to those people, and to our website, and just learn more about it with the PowerPoint and that sort of thing. And if you see that there are things missing on the PowerPoint, like the climate aspect and the carbon sequestration, I want to put a slide in on that. Let us know, because you have another point of view and we're sort of inbred here. Barb, did you want to say something?
Well, the text to your proposed text did deal with carbon sequestration, and it also mentioned 30 by 30 because I had to go look it up to figure out what we were talking about. So that is in your proposed postcard already.
Well, I had to take it out, actually. I don't know, maybe I can squeeze it in. It's just only so much text will fit on a postcard. But yeah, but I'm glad you looked it up.
And speaking of looking it up, let me go to share screen again real quick. And I hope this is from the proposed text of a law that we put together. And it says timber cutting in general, the secretary shall prohibit the cutting and or selling of trees in the Waldo Backcountry Recreation Area. Incidental removal of trees is permitted if conducted for the purpose of maintenance of existing trails as designated by the Waldo Backcountry Recreation Management Plan. So we don't really address the issue of did I take it away too soon? We don't really address the issue of what's called vegetation management today. And I guess the thought was we were going to leave that, other than general commercial logging, we were going to leave that to the Forest Service to manage it as they manage the rest of the forest. Maybe we want to rethink that.
I think considering what the Forest Service can do with the idea of maintenance, we need to tighten that up. The thinning thing is just horrible. So,
and well, the fact that it's inventoried roadless area means they can't put any roads in. So that limits them from doing the general vegetation management scheme that they've been following. But at the same time, you're right, they could go in do hand thinning with hand mechanical tools. And I don't know, we hadn't really thought that through. I guess we need to think that through.
Well, apparently there's going to be a lot of information coming out of the bootleg fire because it burned prescribed burn areas, it burned clear cut areas, it burned commercially thin areas, and it's like the science may come up with something totally different. So maybe our thought would be to have something, rather than saying limiting commercial thinning for fire suppression purposes, that we follow the current science in fire suppression or something like that, just because it looks like the current science is probably going to have a major upheaval when they finally assess what's happening at Bootleg.
I think you're right. And, you know, we've already really reevaluated some of it because of the fires, Labor Day fires from last year. So I think we might get ourselves in a box we don't want to be in by being too specific, because I think you're right. Things are going to be changing in the next year or two. But I don't know. I'll leave that to brighter minds than mine, I guess, to come up with something like that. The big thing is we wanted to make sure no commercial logging happened. And I think we've got that prohibited in the text of the bill.
Yeah, I think there's a discussion to be had about the fuels reduction, you know, the potential fuels reduction. You know, maybe because it's roadless, it's not something to sweat over. But there's just so much legislation being proposed to do fuels reduction everywhere. So
Yeah, even
I'm
by,
always on alert, you know.
by our supposedly environmentally friendly senators.
Yeah.
Wyden, Merkley and particularly Wyden is very pro vegetation management. So, and we're going to depend on them to get this bill through. So that's going to be a little bit of a tightrope, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, Wyden is funded by the timber industry. So partly, you know.
I think that's all I had. Any more questions? So
I do need to get going, but yeah, thank you very much. This was great. I'm looking forward to talking to you guys about it more.
Well, thanks for coming. And we did record it. So at some point I'm gonna be able to, you know, in the next couple of days, I'll be able to send you a link for that in case you can use it some way.
Thank you. Seriously, thank you so much, guys.
Yeah,
thanks for coming.
Nate.
Appreciate
Bye-bye.
it.
Good to see you, Nate.
Good to see you too. Bye, guys.
Hi,
Bye.
everyone.
Okay, so I'm going to end our Zoom. Is that all right with everybody?
Well, Gretchen, if you want to stay on for a minute, Deborah called about 5 minutes ago, and I
Okay.
told her I would call her as soon as we were done.
Okay, all right.
So,
Okay.
So I'm going to
Bye.
stop recording.